Hello, everyone. Thanks for being with us. My name is Brian Ziegler, one of the owners of Method Learning, and I've got with us for the session tonight is Dr. Amanda Stirk, who is our Director of College and Career Advising. She is new to our team here for about a month now at Method Learning, and we couldn't be more excited to have her as part of the team. She brings amazing passion and attitude and knowledge to us and professionalism. I'm sure everybody is looking for a lot of good information about how to help their kids get to college, and Amanda has been doing this for a number of years. She is a published expert in the field, and she's going to talk a little bit today about how to get your child's resume ready for college and how to build that experience and what colleges are looking for. So really excited to offer these new services that Method Learning has now available to everybody. There is an advising link on our website, which you can always go to and kind of check more out in terms of what we will offer now. But for a long time, we've been in the SAT and ACT space and getting students ready on the testing side of going to college. Now it's really awesome that we're able to do the complete package for students, families, and provide services and information that can really help with.
Sorry.
And she does have a dog, or two dogs, right? Do you have two dogs? So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and take it away, Amanda Stirk.
I am so sorry about this. So I have a schnauzer, and the schnauzer, somebody rang the doorbell. So if you have a schnauzer, I apologize for the barking in the background. She should quiet down here in just a minute. Apologies. So very excited to be talking to you all tonight about how to build and write a great college resume. I would like to take a quick poll to find out who you are. So I'm going to launch this. So please, while you're here, if you can click on if you're a parent, student, educator, or other, please do so. Awesome, thank you. Wow, so a lot of parents on tonight, which is fantastic. It sounds like my dog is now calming down. I was trying to give her a minute. So 62% are parents, and it looks like 38% are students. And I know some counselors and educators were going to come on. They'll probably watch the replay tomorrow. So and 2% other. So fantastic. Thank you for again being here, and sorry for the little rough beginning here. So let's just do one more question here. I would like to know, so of being parents and students, what grade are we? Let me launch this. So kind of curious, this presentation tonight is going to be a little bit of everything. We're going to be talking about as early as middle school, 9th grade, 10th grade, but even going into junior, senior year, and how to create a really great resume for the college application and also for college scholarships. So let's just take a minute here. Oh, fantastic. Looks like the 11th graders are in it to win it, which is fantastic, which obviously we get a lot of tutoring for that junior year for ACT and SAT, so that would make sense. Have a few middle schoolers on, welcome, and some 9th graders and 12th graders as well. Fantastic. Great. So definitely I now understand a little bit more of the audience that I am speaking to. And like I said, we're going to kind of cover it all. So no matter what grade you are in, you are definitely going to get a lot out of this session. So I'm going to close that poll. Thank you. All right, let's get started tonight. As Brian said, and thank you always, Brian, for introducing me. I am the new Director of College and Career Advising. Been doing this for many years. I've been in competitive international schools all over. I was in the #1 high school here in Florida, where I started writing curriculum and a student workbook called College Unmazed. It is now sold throughout the United States to parents and students, but also schools, TRIO programs, Upward Bounds, things like that. And so just really trying to bring over 20 years of very intensive experience on the high school to college process to all of you now. So very excited to be here. So let's kind of keep going. And at the end, at the bottom of this PowerPoint, you can see my email address. I have been meeting with families all for the last few weeks, and I just love working with families, talking to schools, or whoever wants to sort of reach out and know more about method learning and our programs and College Unmazed. Our team is definitely here to support you. And just a reminder, if you do have a question, feel free to use the chat, and I'll be watching it and monitoring the chat as well. And if I can interrupt myself, I will, and I will try to answer your question. So the first slide, if you were on my last webinar 2 weeks ago, this slide actually comes from there. So I'm not going to get into all of it. I would suggest to go back and watch that replay because I extensively talked about the different factors that colleges are looking at today. As sort of we regrouped after COVID, colleges have always kind of used what we considered a holistic review, but more really put a heavier focus on grades and ACT and SAT. And now with sort of this idea of test optional, we're seeing that schools are diversifying some of the academic factors and some of the non-academic factors that they are looking into when they're trying to decide if I'm going to accept a student or not accept a student. And again, the last webinar, I really dove into this and how you could find out each college's academic and non-academic factors and how they use that in their level of importance in the admissions process. But I just wanted to review it, and because it kind of starts, I like having the end in mind. So if we know that colleges are using these factors when deciding if they're going to give us admissions or not, we need to start then looking at our resume and building those skills so we are college and career ready at the end of it, so we are meeting the needs of those colleges and where we want to go. So if you look on kind of the left-hand side of academic factors, you'll see things like rigor of your courses. What did you take? That would include your, did you take IB, dual enrollment, AP courses, honors, things like that, your class rank, your academic GPA. So were you doing the best that you possibly can? Standardized test scores, that's ACT, SAT, your essay, and your letters of recommendation. So those are kind of where we see the academic factors. On the non-academic factors, you're going to see really two sections. The first section being things that you can do to actually, you can change, you can fix. And so if you look at the bottom where it's italicized, those are the things you really can't change. So things like extracurricular abilities or activities, your talent, ability, an interview. A lot of schools still use interview from alumni, character, personal qualities, and really like that. And we're going to talk a lot about that this evening. Volunteer work, work experience, and the last one's level of applicant interest. And then some of the things you can't change that they do take into consideration would be, are you first generation? Are you as a parent and alumni of that school? Where do you live? Do you have state residency? Some schools are very interested in your religious affiliation, if you're, Catholic or Jesuit or, Christian, especially if you're going to one of those types of private schools, and then racial and ethnic status as well. So again, we're looking at the end in mind. So now we kind of know that schools are looking at all these factors. So really the question is, how do we build a resume starting as early as middle school, 9th grade, and so forth, to actually build up our resume so we can get that admissions? And that's where we're going to move on to this evening. So one of the first things that we do in our College Unmazed workbook when working with families is we really talk about the 4 main aspects that students need to focus on as early as middle school, 9th grade, 10th grade, As the 11th and 12th graders, it gets a little bit harder to change some of these, but you still have time. I just was speaking with a student today, and we were talking about how is she going to use her summer? What can she do to really kind of round out her resume and her application? We actually wrote out all of her activities, and we started saying, what's the missing piece? What do we need to add so we can sort of have that more robust resume for the application season? So there's really 4 main factors, and we're not going to talk too much about the 4th one, which is money factor, this evening. We'll save that for another time. But the 3 that we really want students to focus on in building is something called your U factor, which we'll discuss. We're going to talk about your academic factor, which we'll discuss, and we'll talk about your career factor. And the 4th one, money factor, is really just college knowledge on financing, scholarships, things like that. And at the heart of everything, there's some key strengths or skills that you need to have as a student. And if I go back one slide, and we are talking about this character and personal qualities. So what does that mean? So that's where the 8 strengths really come into play. And so the 8 strengths, these are all research-based, data-driven, when you look at what makes a successful student. So one of the things that why you're submitting your transcript and your ACT and SAT scores and your resume and those things to colleges is they're looking at you and they're looking at the type of student they're looking for to say, is this student, is Amanda going to be successful at my school? Because they really don't want to invest in you if you're just going to drop out or not be successful or just take 6 years. And they really want a student that engages in the campus, is actively participating, is going to their classes. And so there's some key things that they are looking for to say, yes, the student is college and career ready. So if you kind of go through and read through them, I won't spend a long time on each of them, but the first one really I think is important, and all 8 are important in their own right, but agency. So do you really have something that's meaningful to you, that you are actively pursuing, you're trying to take advantage of the opportunities that arise and come your way, and that you really are started to have that sort of focus, right? Very important. 2, that you have positive beliefs, that you really have self-confidence to seize new opportunities, to persevere when there's issues, and you really believe that your talents, your capabilities, they can grow, right? So that you're not just sort of stagnant, that you're not just using what's in front of you and saying, I don't really need to do that. So that's why your resume is so important, because it shows where you've been passionate about and where you're really exploring your opportunities. Do you have goals, right? So are you looking at going to doing a 4-year degree and being done? Are you looking at going to grad school? Are you looking at doing research? You know, how are you actually cultivating and pursuing both your short-term and your long-term goals are really important. They also want to know, do you know yourself? Do you know kind of where your interests lie, your values, your personality, sort of what fits you, right? And why you want to do that. So really knowing yourself and who you are is really key. Becoming a successful student. So do you demonstrate the ability to be successful in and out of the classroom? And that's going to be like the time management, study skills, you know, those things that you have to do every day. And that's why actually your GPA is one of the biggest predictors of college success. So they really want to see students that consistently have grown over the last 4 years, right? Freshman to senior year, and that you have really continually taken on maybe harder classes, maybe an extra honors, a few IEPs, and you kind of build on that to become more successful as you go. A character for workplace success. So do you get along with others? You know, do you like a collaborative environment? Do you do well in teamwork? And are you dependable? Are you a leader? Or do you sort of get overcome and break down? Those are things that they really do look for. And we'll kind of talk about where these sort of show up in your resume and in your application, because there are certain parts that they're looking for these things when they're reviewing you as a student. College knowledge. So this is basically, have you learned really critical information about the college process? And this is sort of, I don't want to minimize it, but it's terminology, right? Do you understand FAFSA? Do you understand what a syllabus is? Do you understand office hours? Do you understand how do you pick a major and see an advisor? And those are the things that a lot of times, especially if you're first generation student and your parents didn't go to college, that a student just might not know. And a lot of high schools don't teach that. And that's why I think the College on Maze curriculum is so important, because it really focuses on that essential college knowledge. Two of my authors, they actually did a survey on college knowledge especially, and they found less than 50% of seniors could answer basic college knowledge questions. And when you're first gen or low income, it was even less than that. It was like 38.6%. And lastly, have you built a successful college support network? That's going to be teachers, your parents, mentors. It could be a coach, but somebody really that is helping you and helping you pursue post-secondary education. And that's where like letters of recommendation come in really handy. But those are people that are helping you through the process so you are successful. So what are some ways that you can develop your 8 strengths? And again, they're going to use your resume, your essay, your letters of recommendation. They're going to use those materials that you submit to determine this, right? So you're showing colleges and scholarship readers, the people that are going to be assessing if they're going to give you lots of money or not. And I will say, I was meeting today, I'm on several scholarship committees, and we were going over a rubric and we were figuring out, how are we going to award the scholarship and what points do all of these things matter to us? And so we were actually creating a rubric. So when students apply, that we are rating them against other students. And how do we see that? Through your resume, your essay, your letters of recommendation, right? And so what are some ways? So work experience, part-time, whether it's working for mom and dad, whether it's working for Culver's, I love Culver's from the Midwest, maybe you're working for the local grocery store, you're babysitting, doesn't matter. Having a nice part-time job or something that you can do, an internship, really shows that work ethic, it shows persistence, time management, but it keeps you like that you show up, right? And so, a summer job, your lifeguarding, that really does mean something. Now, again, you don't have to do all of these. You're really going to probably pick maybe 3 or 4 and do them really well. So some of you might have to work because you got to pay for a car, or you want to save up some money, and that's okay. So, and I'll show you actually on the resume, one of the questions that applications will ask is, how often do you do this? How many hours per week and how many weeks per year? So that's really important. Community involvement. Now, community involvement doesn't always have to mean that you're sort of all over the place and trying to, do everything to everybody, but it should be more focused and it should be more high community impact, that you're really doing something that means something. That you also are looking for creative pursuits, that you're looking for exploring things, your individuality, different disciplines. Also, like that you're actually thinking outside of the box, right? That you are looking for something beyond just sort of the go-to sort of static, this is easy, but you're thinking and you're really exploring your options. Major specific activities. So that's going to be, if the student I was working with today, we were talking, she wants to be going to medicine. So she's really into horseback riding, and she spends a lot of time on horseback riding and competing and so forth. So we were trying to figure out what were some additional things that could really show her passion in the medical field. What could she be doing that's a little bit more career focused, specific content, and really kind of gets into what she wants to pursue? Because one of the things that they want to see on your resume is that you're actually starting to start that process. Because if you have a goal to be, say, a doctor, they would expect, if you had 4 years, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, that you would be doing something within that field, whether you're within HOSA, maybe you're doing a local volunteer at your local hospital. They want to, maybe you're doing a CNA program during the summer, things like that. So what are you doing to actually cultivate that passion and that sort of career focus? They also want to look for school clubs and activities. You know, how long have you actually been involved? And have you been actively involved, not passively involved, right? So there's a difference between I show up to the meeting every day versus I'm lieutenant governor of Key Club and running for state treasurer. And I've been doing it for 3-4 years, and I spend, you know, 15-20 hours a week on that. It's very different. So are you actively involved? And you show that longevity, not just for freshman year, but for sophomore, junior, senior year, that you stick with something, and really the focus that you are supporting your team, your school, and that you are really a student that believes that they're making their school and their community a better place. And then last, that you're taking on some leadership opportunities. So that skill building, responsibility, initiative, you know, that maybe you were a member as a freshman, as a sophomore, you went and you were secretary, then you were vice president, but that you built up those leadership opportunities throughout your 4 years. And that's where you really have to think of your resume as a 4-year plan, right? And what does that look like across? And, you know, it's whenever I sit down with a family and a student and we start going over the resume, and they're like, well, in 8th grade, I won the science fair at my middle school. Great, but what have you done since 8th grade? Like, you need a little bit more. So you're saying in 3.5 years, you haven't done much else? And so you really want to look at how you're using your time. So if you're seeing that you've done a lot as a freshman, but maybe not so much as a sophomore, junior, what's the reason? Did you move? Maybe you were into basketball, but you got hurt? Well, that's where like maybe an essay needs to come into play. But you want to look at this and you want to grow that leadership throughout your 4 years. So moving on to and remember, if you have any questions, chat right in the chat. But yep, we'll keep going.
We do have one.
Oh, thank you. Okay, can you read it here?
What about kids who are not sure what they want to make, what they want their major to be?
Awesome. I am going to hold on to that question just for a second, and we will talk about it coming up. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Brian. So academic factors. So what are some ways? So if I go back to my first slide here, right, where I had the 4 factors. So the U factor is what I was just discussing. It's really kind of creating that sort of passion, that who you are. Are you going to be a theater kid? Are you a science kid? And it doesn't mean that you have to be one or the other, right? So you can mix and match all you want, but what's important to you? And in showing that passion, cultivating that passion, but also cultivating those skills, those 8 strengths are really critical, right? So, and I can't tell you exactly what that is. I will help you and I will guide you through that process, but you know, what do you want to do and who do you want to be? And there's going to be sometimes, you know, I get a lot of athletes that love sports, they love playing lacrosse, they love doing, you know, crew and all that, but they don't plan on doing that in college, but that's still part of their U factor. So even if it's not your college bound with that activity, that's not always what's necessary. Again, it's all those skills that you're showing. So now we're going to move into sort of that academic factor. So if you're thinking about building your resume, how do you do it through your academics? And so there's really 3 different ways that colleges are really looking at. So the first one is what I sort of mentioned and the first slide is your academic coursework. So what type of courses did you take while you're in high school? So especially that rigor, right? Honors courses, credit by examination, and credit by examinations, that's when you take a college level course and you usually take an exam at the end of it. So that could be like an AP program, an IB program, Cambridge ACE, CLEP exams. That would be considered under academic coursework, same as dual enrollment or dual credit, whatever it's called in your state. MOOCs, and we're going to be talking MOOCs should be on the next slide here, which are massive open online courses, which Brian will kind of answer some of that question. So MOOCs is a great opportunity if you don't have a lot of things at your disposal, and it's a way that you can sort of explore other maybe careers or interests that might not be at your school or might be during the summer when you don't have the sort of academic, quote unquote, academic opportunities that you might, and maybe you don't want to spend a exorbitant amount on a summer camp. You can do a MOOC, which again, we'll talk about. And then industry certification. So that's when basically you go in and you work with a career and technical program. It could be like a CNA. It could be maybe you get like a health certificate. Maybe you get like a small accounting certificate, but it's a specialized program either at your high school or in conjunction with a local college or local career and technical education. But in a lot of fields, those can be really important. So for example, I used to work at a college and we had several certifications in like business, science. There's a scientific research, what was this? Like scientific research workforce certificate or something like that. But those are directly employable. And if say you as a student wanted to do research and go to more of a highly selective school, if you had done this certification, you're gonna be at the top of the pile when they're looking at, hey, should I accept this student or this student, because you're doing the work already. And if you can get a nice little part-time job that might be in your career kind of pathway, even better. So I never minimize industry certifications because I do think that they have a lot of value, even for those high achieving students that want to continue on, but it's a nice way to roll that into another degree, like a bachelor's degree or so forth. So academic coursework, very, very important. Your grades, how did you do in your classes, right? So they look at your unweighted GPA, they look at your weighted GPA, and they also look at what we call a recalculated GPA, right? So they're looking at, were you consistent? Did you keep those scores going up? Or did you not do so well in your core classes and you did much better in your elective classes, right? So they're looking at it all. And if you don't know what a recalculated, obviously you know unweighted, an A is an A, doesn't matter if it's a regular class like PE versus AP Physics, it's all the same. Weighted is when they give you extra points for being an honors, AP, dual enrollment, things like that. And recalculated is when they remove or change your grades to kind of do more apples to apples from different students from different schools. And so a lot of times what you see in a recalculated GPA is a college will look at primarily core classes and give you additional points for honors and credit by examination college level coursework. And so it's easier to compare when, you know, one student's a 4.0 system, somebody else is a 6.0, somebody's on a 100-point scale. So it kind of makes everything a little bit more equal when comparing students. And lastly, your test scores. So not only your ACT, your SAT, but they also do look at how did you do in those credit by examination. So what were those AP scores or your IB scores? What did that look like, right? And were you successful in those? Maybe you got an A in the course, but you got a 1 in the AP, you know, environmental science, you know, test. That says something. Or maybe you got a C, but you got a 5. Well, what does that say, right? So they can use all that information to really look at how that does. So one thing I do want to show you, because I do think it's interesting, and I'm going to actually give you a handout here. I put a handout here. Oh, whoop, I lost my thing here. Hold on. I dropped it here. So let me choose a file. Nope, I don't want that one. Drag and drop. Okay, there we go. Nope, that's not dragging and dropping. All right, I'll get it up. I don't know why it's not. Maybe, Brian, do you see, does it pop, the MOOCs infographic pop up for you?
Yep, it's in there.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so you already have it. Good. So if you open that, you actually have the links to all of these. It's an interactive PDF, which is fantastic. But here's a list of different massive open online courses that are from all over the world. They could be from really large companies like Google, Microsoft, but it could also be from a lot of universities, right? It could be Duke or UPenn or Harvard or Yale. And what's really interesting about these courses is it's on hundreds, if not even thousands of topics. So if you're into anime, if you're into photography, if you're into accounting or neuroscience, or there's a really good one on Coursera. It's extremely popular. Millions of people have taken it. And it's like don't quote me on this, but it's like the study of happiness. And what does that mean? And it's from a Yale course. And a lot of times they're free, sometimes they're not, and sometimes there's a small amount associated with it. And you get into the course, and sometimes, like I said, there could be a certification at the end. Like if you do a series, like some of the Microsoft certifications you can get through Coursera. And so it really allows a student, if you're not sure what you want to do, you want to do something over the summer, and you really want to explore sort of your career options and even enhance some of your academic factor, these are a fantastic way to do this. And I'll actually tell you a story. So, I've been singing the praises of MOOCs for a long time, and now they're just so robust, and there's so many different courses out there with, everywhere from a week to 5 weeks to you can get a whole master's degree on these MOOCs now. And so anyway, my daughter, she's a sophomore, and she's at a pretty highly competitive school. And she has a lot of opportunities, but summer's kind of limited. She's looking for something to do. And where she's really passionate about is epidemiology. And she's really, with COVID and viruses, she just really finds it interesting. She likes the medical field without the medical-y stuff, I guess. And so what she did is she went through ChatGPT and gave it some parameters. I would like a course with this many weeks. I'm expecting this many hours. I want it to be free. I would like to do that. So she put all these kind of parameters in ChatGPT, and it came out with a really cool, it was a study plan for her. And she said, I have 6 weeks. What would this look like? And it had step-by-step. And what it also brought in were some other webinars and courses from like the CDC and other sort of nonprofit organizations besides these MOOCs, and really had a cool plan. I will say some of the links were broken because ChatGPT is from 2021. And so they kind of, took the internet, they removed the internet. And so that's why sometimes you do get broken links when you do that program. But it gave her a really neat plan and a way to sort of explore some different options. So just adding on to the conversation, kind of a different way to think about how you might, look at your summer and how you could use the internet and courses like this to really help you plan and be specific. I'll tell you, a few years ago, I had a student he used Coursera. He wanted some more advanced mathematics, and the school allowed. And he ended up getting one from Duke. And this is a true story. So we figured out which class to do. We went to Duke, and he ended up reaching out to the professor. And again, it's just a massive open online classes. There's tons of kids, but he was doing exceptionally well. And he started this conversation, and he had done some dual enrollment before, and he was, valedictorian. He was a top-notch student, right? And he ended up talking to his professor from Duke, and ended up, he said, hey, I have this research project. I really like what you're doing. I mean, you're just blowing through this course. How would you like to help me? And lo and behold, that one course led to helping him with a research project. And he ended up with, it wasn't quite a full ride, but it was pretty darn close. We were pretty happy, all because of that Coursera class that he had taken and curated and had done. So just I think it's a neat program. So here's just, again, bunch of them. Please, you can use that handout for the links to other ones. So definitely something to consider. So let's move on. Let's see. Okay. So adding on just a little bit further, and I won't go super far into the career factor because I think I did just sort of explain, that there's lots of ways. And that was going back to Brian, the question that you had is when you don't know, what do you do? Well, use the activities and the things around you and the people around you, not only to gain sort of occupational knowledge, like, kind of what's out there. Like, I want to go medical, like say my daughter, I want to go medical and I like science, but I don't want blood. I don't want to touch people. What could I do? So curating as a family and as a parent and as a school, that idea of what is the world of work, because our worlds are very small. I know I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and when you ask what do you want to be, it's I want to be a princess, or I want to be a teacher, or I want to be a nurse, or I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a veterinarian. Your world is very limited to what you see on TV and what your parents do. And there's a whole world of work that we really, it's just exploding with globalization and online. And I'm connected now to 80 people right now, and you're from all over the country. And so our occupational knowledge is much smaller than we think it is. So even as a parent, if you don't know the field of study your student might be interested in, do some research. See, can you go job shadow? Can you go do a little internship? Can you go do a little part-time job for somebody, or just go explore what your options are? So understanding what's out there is really important, but also helping your student understand what is about them that makes it special, right? What are your values? What are your interests? What are your abilities? Like, you don't want me doing your math. That's not my forte. I could talk to you all day long, but don't make me do that SAT math. And so knowing what you're good at is really important. And when we put those two together, is when we can really make an informed decision about what my path should be. So within College MAs and with some of the things that I do as a college and career advisor is we do a lot of personality tests. And so we find out, what are those abilities? What are those interests? And so Brian and I were on before you guys all came on, and we were talking about what's kind of a career advising do I do? I said, one of my favorite activities, and I said this, didn't I, Brian? I said, one of my favorite activities is I like going to wherever the student wants to go to college. So let's say UPenn, okay? I want to go to UPenn. What do you want to be? I want to be a mechanical engineer. Okay, great. So bring up in the college catalog mechanical engineering and look at all the courses that are required of that degree. And I would get into the descriptions, I would look at them, and I would really say, look at the mathematics you have to take, look at the science courses you have to take. If you're struggling in Algebra 2 now, going to differential equations might be a really difficult challenge, right? And so students can sort of start looking ahead and saying, I don't want them to be scared by that work. Some are really excited by it and they're ready to take it on, and with hard work and passion, they can definitely get there. But knowing what's going to be required of that potential major, and if I get that major, am I going to get the job I want? And what does that job actually look like is very, very powerful. So you can easily start doing that as early as middle school all the way through. And I do wish, if you do have some seniors, I know I do, make sure whatever college that you're choosing really focuses on that career factor, and that they have curated internships and study abroad opportunities and research and things that you can really drill into that. What do I want to be earlier than your junior, senior year, right? So I think that's really key. Brian, any questions so far? Nope.
Nope, we're good right now.
Awesome. All right. So we talked a lot, right? So I showed you how to sort of build your U factor. I showed you how to sort of start building your academic factor. And I started showing you different ways and considerations on building your career factor. So we've talked about a lot in these last 38 minutes, right? So now, how does this translate to your resume, right? And so I love having a student start their resume as early as possible. It is always so hard when, come the end of your junior year, you're trying to remember, what did I do? How many hours did I do that? What's going on? It's such a hard conversation with families, and they forget because you are probably very busy and you're a high achieving kid. And so build a resume early and keep it consistent, right? And we can always narrow it down once you're ready for applications, and we can narrow it down when the time is right, but start logging it. And so what I would do is really structure it in this way. I would have all the bullet points that you see. So what's your objective? And I'm going to show you an example of this. So your objective or your summary, summary of skills, maybe special qualifications that you have, or things that kind of you think make you special and different. Maybe education, what's your GPA, your test scores, are you in an AP program, an IB program? And then the other ones, activities, work experience, volunteer experience. When you're actually doing your application, you'll pick, is it an activity, is it work, is it volunteer? But it's good to kind of keep track of that. Did you get paid for it? Did you not? And what would you label that? And one of the things that, again, I'll show you is that longevity, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, how long have you actually done it? Also keep track of any awards and certificates such as Honor Roll, a National Honor Society, maybe you won a science fair in 9th, 10th grade, maybe you won district tennis match, like keep those, a list of those is really important. And then anything else that makes you shine. Maybe you've taught yourself Python. Maybe you have taught yourself, I had a student I've worked with this past year that taught herself Korean and really enjoyed that. Where do you put that on your resume, right? So she didn't take a formal class. She just did it through, I think it was Mango or one of the Babbel, something like that. But we put it on her transcript because she became actually pretty good, and I wouldn't say fluent, but she was definitely an intermediate, in Korean, and taught herself that. So it wouldn't show up on her transcript per se. So you do want to make sure you're clear, you're organized, you're really showing that passion and that's relevant to you. Keep it simple. Really look at the key words that you're using, those real descriptive words. If you can make it somewhat major activity specific, so if you're going into science or you're going into business, I should see kind of a trajectory towards that major, and even the wording you use kind of goes towards that. And then you're really thinking about your admission story, so I'm using all my documents, how does that look? Provide details, be honest, accurate. And obviously, as you're curating this, you're going to be using this also for college admissions, scholarships. So you really, you want to have something that's sort of generic at the beginning, but you want to tailor it as different programs ask for different applications. You want to make sure it's edited correctly, that you're not misspelling things. I had a student, it was like a year ago, and I'm like, you need to capitalize your name in your college application. Like, just capitalize it. She just kind of looked at me. I'm like, no, we have to capitalize your name. You'd be shocked at the spelling issues and errors that I find. And you want to make sure that your resume is comprehensive. Avoid any abbreviations. A lot of schools, clubs use a lot of acronyms, and not all college admissions are going to know what those acronyms are. There's abbreviations. And don't saturate with unimportant details, and really don't just keep adding minutia, details just to go from 3 activities to 10 activities. So this is how I would create it. You could do it in a Google Doc, a Word doc, whatever. I put your name. I would put whatever sort of your objective is, where do you want to go? What do you want to major in? What are you looking for? You see there's an example of a summary, just some 4 or 5 bullet points of some key things that you think are sort of interesting for you. Your education, so maybe your class rank, like I said, your GPA, your test scores. And then, and I'll show you activities and experience here on the next slide, you're going to organize it like this. The name of the activity, the type it is a club, organization, work, academic, volunteer, sports, label it, really important. And then if you also, I would even add, if you have a leadership role, it'll ask you, like, what was your position? Your description, the reason I put 150 characters is that is what the Common App will only allow. I like starting off your resume with 2 or 3 sentences and having it a little bit more robust when you're giving that to letters of, like recommenders, to write a letter of recommendation, or to scholarships, to work, wherever you're sending it to. But eventually you're going to have to hone that down to the essential keywords and keep it under 150 characters. Again, grades participated, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then your weeks per year and hours per week. And you'll see on the right-hand side, I just gave you some words to think about, different attributes or things that, try to, besides saying I did this, I created, I developed, really think of some of those more meaningful sort of verbs and kind of description words that aren't bland and sort of obvious, right? So here's just an example of how I would write the resume. Again, what you're doing is you're creating, basically, I'm giving you the template to how Common App and most applications will ask for your information. So if you can start doing this now, it's going to make a world of difference later. So what's your activity? Is it academic? Is it sports? How long you participated? Again, hours per week and weeks per year, you're going to be estimating. Don't get crazy. If you did it for 1 week and you got 40 hours because you did 8 to 5, then you're going to put 1 week, for 40 hours for 1 week. And then you're going to give, like I said, a 2 or 3. I would go a little bit more robust here, right? Again, 2 to 3 sentences. If you can put, like, we raised $800, or I grew our social media following by 25%. If you can add some of those statistics and numbers, it's always great because we can see that you're really thinking of that. And then you're also just sort of saying, what did I do? So again, you're going to be using this for a lot of different opportunities, but having it ready is important. So I'll use my daughter as an example. So my daughter comes to me, she did the ChatGPT, we talked about the MOOCs, we developed a plan, and she came and she said, Mom, do you know that there's a summer program for the CDC? And that's what she wants to do. And I said, well, you already got your resume. I know you're a sophomore, but you have your resume already done. You have everything. You had some letters of recommendation because she applied to this honors program. So submit for it. You have everything done. And literally we had like a week and a half to get everything together. But because we had those documents already together, they were ready to go, they were already polished, what would have been sort of a nightmare trying to get everything together, we submitted it, we got it in the mail, and we got it off sent. And so I think it's really important to have this stuff early, so that way any opportunity that comes available, you have. The other items that you can put on the resume, honors and distinctions. So again, sometimes you only have so much space for your resume and your activities. So sometimes they give you other space for honors and distinctions. So you can just create a list. Like an AP Scholar with distinction, you're not going to write 2 or 3 sentences on that. So if it's just sort of a quick line and you don't want to take up a whole space, you could stick it over in that section. And then sometimes having coursework, a lot of applications will ask you to type in, what courses you have. I don't think I would have that for everything because that's what a transcript is for, but it is good that you have that sort of in your repertoire, right? That you're ready to use that. And so kind of lastly here, I know I just got a few minutes and I want to open it up to questions. And it should be, if you go into your handouts, there's a second handout, which actually this form that I just showed you with the examples is right there in that resume example. And that comes right out of the College on Maze book. And I put there's little notes on the side of kind of, things to pay attention to as you get going. So make sure you do download that. This is again for my, yes.
Amanda, sorry, before you go on to the next topic, we do have a couple of questions that are pretty relevant to what you just covered. So
awesome, please.
Yeah, so the first one is, are you better off taking harder classes, IP, AP and honors, even if that means a lower grade than if you take a Regents class and get a better grade? That's the first question.
All right, let me take a quick drink. All right, that was actually, I think, on the question on the last webinar as well. It depends. I would really want to know why they're taking that. So if it's part of that sort of that academic career focus, Let's say a student really wants to, I'll just use continuous biology, right? And you want to go in the medical field. If your school has an AP biology and you're not taking it, I would be concerned, right? I would say if you really wanted to do this major and you have an AP available to you, why did you not take it? So if you think biology or calculus is going to be really tough for you, then really consider why you're taking it, right? And two, what does the rest of my schedule look like so I can be as successful as possible? I think sometimes kids overload themselves on too many APs and they want to do everything to everybody and feel like they need to do that. If you're not going to be a finance major or go into political science, AP economics might not be your best choice. So maybe you back off and take regular econ and then go for the more advanced AP. So it really depends. But the option is if you think you're gonna struggle or you need to put more time and effort into a course, but it's something that you're passionate about and is really going to align with your college and career goals, then I would definitely take on the rigor, but just look at yourself as a whole and try to be as successful as possible. Great question.
Great. Yeah, and then the next one is more of a technical question. Do college resumes go through ATS, applicant tracking software scans? Should we follow the same formatting guidelines we do for professional resumes in business?
So somebody's in HR, so that's great. I love that. That's a great question. No, so what they all end up doing is using very few, some can say you can upload a PDF and it's just going to be an additional document you're uploading. But what they're going to have you do is they're going to have you transfer this into their own program. So really that formatting is going to be all stripped out. So they're not looking necessarily for keywords. They're going to be reading your information. So they're not doing the same tracking system like an applicant system would look like. But you do want to use your words wisely. You want to make sure it's edited and correct and everything else like that. But no, it is a different system. And your PDF, I wouldn't get fancy by it. I would keep it pretty simple. I always like a little flair. I mean, if you're looking at my infographics and my color, that's just kind of who I am. So I would be hard pressed to, not have a little color on mine. But for most people, just keep it simple, keep it to the point. But you don't need to follow anything specific because you're going to be copying and pasting. And that's another great point is if you have it on like a Google Doc or a Word doc, when you're getting into all those college applications, copying and just copying and pasting instead of kids typing. I don't know about you, but my typing, even though I'm fast, we all make mistakes, right? So having it already sort of written out, you're just copying and pasting right into the boxes, but you don't really have the opportunity to like upload really a resume. Some do, and some will take it, but for the most part, it's a standardized application. But great question. Thank you, Mr. or Mrs. HR. So, any other questions, Brian?
No, we're good.
Awesome, perfect. And so again, I shared this slide last time, but I do think it's important because I think it's important for parents and families to know that this is one aspect of the college application process. But I would say is one of the most important because your resume, when you sit down with somebody that knows how to read a resume and to help guide a student with their resume, I can look at a resume and say, I know what I want to hear more about. Tell me more about that. And tell me more about your story and your background. So your resume lends to what should I write in my essay? And what should my recommenders write in their letters of recommendation? What more information could somebody in college admissions really want? And so a lot of students waste a lot of time and have a lot of stress because they go directly to the essay. I'm so worried about the essay that when you don't have a solid resume to start from, you're already behind the 8 ball. You are already sort of, out of the loop and you're going to be way more stressed than you need to. So I always start with the resume first. And again, having those documents ready, finalized. When a scholarship comes up, I was on a phone call with a family senior, going to a very highly selective school. And basically, they came in and they're starting to look for scholarships in April, right? And I'm like, well, you have some of these documents ready. Now let's just quickly switch them over to scholarship mode, because what you're writing for admissions is going to be different for scholarships. They're looking sort of for different things. But if you have those documents, we can quickly make some edits, make some changes, and now you're ready and you can start submitting for additional scholarships. So all those things are very much connected. So when you have good, great documents, it's gonna change everything, to be honest. And then obviously the other side of the house, you know, your transcript, your grades, your standardized test scores, completing the FAFSA, your CSS profile, all those things are just really super important. And I know I got so we're going to be out of time here, and I'll definitely stay on for a few more minutes if you guys have any more questions. I'm going to be back, and I think Brian, you're going to maybe come back as help me as well in 2 weeks, May 2nd, 8 o'clock, same time. And I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on moving from really, can I just get in? And I'm going to show you how to sort of assess, can I get in? To also adding, where will I be successful as a student, and what do I need to do to make sure I'm successful? Whether you're a 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader, whatever, we want to make sure that, you know, yes, getting in is important, but also more important is that I'm going to be successful at that university. So we're going to be talking a lot about fit, getting into some more data on schools and colleges. So it's going to be a really another great presentation. So we have, that should be the QR code to be able to register for the next one. And if you want to meet with me, my schedule is starting to really fill up, which is fantastic. I love meeting with families. I have a QR code that goes directly to my direct meeting link. So please, if you want to ask me a question or you want to find out more about our new college and career advising packages and the things that we can do to help you through writing your resume, writing your essay, finding these schools, and really going through in a nice, easy, stressless way, a stress-free way, I definitely want to be there for you and your family. So that just kind of leads us to our last, that we do have several packages available. We do have a discount going on right now, since you were hanging out with me this evening, taking up your time and hanging with me, which is great. Anywhere from just, hey, let's get in, focus on your documents, to all the way to helping you with everything and really diving into your supplementals and your essays and all of that. So Brian, any kind of questions, or we'll give everybody a minute here if you have any further questions at all?
Yeah, we had a question about the IB classes, posted some information in there about it, but if you want to speak a little bit about just kind of the International Baccalaureate program and how that's a distinction in some high schools, that might be
Absolutely. So the IB program is one of the oldest and longest running programs. I mean, you find it, again, internationally all over. In a lot of my international schools, I went to the IB program. So the IB program, and same with some of the AP, we really consider it a comprehensive program. So what they do is, if a school is offering it, their teachers are trained in the IB curriculum, and there's a set of curriculum that they follow in different core subject areas like mathematics, theory, science. And so the student has to take so many of these IB courses in each of the sort of core domains. At the end of that, there isn't a standardized IB test that every student is given. And based on those IB scores, at some colleges, quite a few, do offer college credit based on those scores. Now, if you do an IB or an AP, those scores, like let's say you get a 4 on an AP test and you get the college credit, you don't get, like, it doesn't translate to a grade. You don't get a B or you don't get A, you just get credit. And so instead of taking composition 1, typically you can bypass composition 1. If you took and passed AP English language, bypass comp 1 and you can go right into comp 2. So very similar to the IB program. If you take, you know, the English in the IB program and you pass the exam, a lot of colleges, and that's really important to go into the college's college catalog And if you're doing an IB or an AP or even dual enrollment, CLEP, usually there is a college policy on how and what score they need for them to be able to take that credit. So I live here in Florida. If you do get, and we have another one, it's called Cambridge ACE, very similar program. And if a student gets an IB diploma or an ACE diploma, they actually get a full tuition scholarship to any of our state universities. So a lot of students do take those. So what it shows is rigor. It's a specialized program. Schools are very familiar with it. So it's showing that sort of academic factor that you are excelling in those courses. The one hard thing is that's different than like saying AP or dual enrollment is it's a pretty structured program that once kids are in there, they don't let you sort of specialize as much. Where AP, you could just take AP Bio or just take AP English. Like you don't have to do it as a whole program. So sometimes APs could be better, or dual enrollment where you just take one or two in your sort of specialty. So yeah, that's IB. So definitely look it up. It is a very reading and writing intensive program, like a lot of the college prep stuff. So if your student really struggles with reading and writing, you definitely want to see one of our, reading and writing one of our tutors and get caught up on that. Because if you struggle with that, you can get behind and get pretty frustrated pretty quickly. So if you don't have some of those academic skills in reading, writing, math, I would definitely get a tutor, get some help early so you're more prepared for those programs. Long answer, sorry about that. That's what I do. Any other questions, Brian?
Yeah, we've got, do you have a personality test that you would recommend for students?
Yeah, so the one that we use in the book that we like the most that's connected to the career factor is ONET. So ONET's completely free and it's a really great, it's run by, I think it's the DOD something, one of them. I forget, military, I believe. But they have a really good, the Hollins code. So they'll ask you your questions and, do you like this? Do you like this? And it's a very robust website. It's ugly as all get out. It's not pretty to go through, but it has thousands of careers really outlined to your interest, your abilities, your values. It says you can go drill down by state. How much would I make if I have this career? How much education do I need? But it's your ONET, and then it's got like the little asterisk, like a little star asterisk net. But that is definitely for free. Is definitely your best resource. And like I said, if you want to do the College Amazed, we have a whole activities focused on ONET. So really great program.
Great. And then and I'll someone had just asked how to spell it, but I'll post the link to that to the resource center in the answer there. Another question, looks like probably the last one. If you want to be a business major and took AP Physics in high school and received a 1 on the AP test, C for class, how does admissions view this, especially if you have other AP classes and did well? So basically, if you didn't do well outside of your specialty.
Yeah, I know, and I completely get that. In the end, I hope it's okay, right? I hope everything else that you've done outshines that. I will say, I had a student I was working with this year applying to some very highly selective schools, and she had a C in AP Calc, and even the main university saw the C and said no. Like UF is our big school, but she was also looking at Michigan and some other big schools. And so some focus a lot more on the holistic review, and some are just looking for anything to kind of not have you in that pool. So I would definitely, what I would probably do is use my letter of recommendation. I wouldn't put that on the resume per se. I don't want to make it outstanding and like put stars around it by any means, but I would potentially look at using your letter of recommendations and have somebody really sort of maybe attest to that. And I wouldn't use your essay because that's 600 words on why you don't like AP Physics and you don't want to do business. You could allude to it, like maybe you're talking about you built a business and you became an entrepreneur and you did all this, and you're like, yeah, I realized I wasn't going to be a physics major. Like you could make like kind of a little lighthearted joke and move on, right? Or somebody within your recommender could mention it as well, that at least you really put yourself out there, you really tried hard, but in the end you found out your passion really is business and how much you've excelled in that. So there are ways that you can sort of talk about it and get it in there, but yet move on from it. So that's what I would suggest, is really, again, looking at all your documents and where can I sort of talk about it without spending 600 words saying why you hate AP Physics at this point, right?
Yeah.
Does that help? I hope so. If not, email me and we can talk more about that.
Great. Well, yeah, that looks like it, Amanda. So thank you. This was super informative. Looking forward to the next session in 2 weeks. Hope everybody can be part of that as well. Thanks everybody for your time tonight. We know that it's valuable family time in the evening, and we certainly appreciate your attention to this and your interest in the services that we're providing. We're really, like I said, we're really excited that Amanda can be part of this team and bring some really, really much needed information and knowledge to these conversations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you everyone for attending. Really appreciate it. Please reach out. Hope to meet you all very soon. Take care.
All right. Thanks.